Thanks, Philip, and thank you for joining us today. Hope you're having a great weekend. My goal of the show is to interview our community leaders that help make Putnam County a great place to live, work, and raise our families. Today's show is a tough one, but it's about our out-of-control drug problem that we have not only here in Putnam County but nationwide. And to do the problem justice, we need an expert on the matter. So today my guest is Mr. Bill Gibson, who's the Executive Director of Power of Putnam and former district attorney here in the region. And also, we go back a long ways, Bill. Thank you for being on the show this morning.
I'm so happy to be here, Andy.
We go back to a time, you were a city policeman, I was a paramedic. I don't remember a drug problem back then, back in the 70s, and I can remember when we first started seeing marijuana, and most of the drug overdoses that we worked back then were Valium. You rarely saw a death from one of those drug overdoses. It was usually someone trying to get attention that had major problems, but totally a different scenario today. Can you kind of walk us through from where we were back then when we didn't have a big problem to where we are today?
It was certainly an easier time back in the 70s and 80s, and I enjoyed reminiscing with you a little bit before we went on the air.
We had some good times back then.
We were serving at the police department and at EMS, and but we've got a good community here, and it's still the same good people here. But
absolutely,
we definitely have seen an evolution from the 70s. Like you said, it was largely marijuana, and sometimes marijuana would be laced with things, and you heard about and you saw a little bit of things like LSD on some of the college campuses, and speed and some things that people would take, but it wasn't just nearly as widespread as it is now. It was marijuana, and marijuana transitioned into cocaine. Cocaine became the bigger challenge, as time went on into the 70s and 80s, and then as it further developed, it turned into crack cocaine. They found ways to process cocaine to make it more potent, and at the same time, more addictive and more destructive to the people using it. And then at some point in time, cocaine, which had to be imported and brought across,
smuggled across
the borders, and go through several levels of different hands to get to the end user. But they came up with methamphetamine. And when we first started hearing about methamphetamine here, I was in the district attorney's office, and the first thing we saw were crimes that involved very erratic and unexplainable behavior.
Yes.
There were some young men in DeKalb County that killed a couple of fellas over the course of about a week, and we learned as it developed that a lot of people had come in and out of where these young men were being held and sort of tortured, and that nobody reported or did anything, and it boggled your mind to put together how this could have happened.
Yeah.
And it was this new drug that was involved, and it was methamphetamine. And so it started in Tennessee. It spread from west to east across the nation. It was kind of a biker drug at first, and a lot of use in California. And then people came around. We had a fella from here that went and learned how to make it, and he came back. I know he came back here and was teaching different people. But what really boosted that was the internet.
Right.
And with the advent of the internet, there were all these recipes, and people could learn how to make it with basically components, supplies that you could buy at the co-op and at Walmart. And so it became a huge problem in the late 90s and early 2000s. But then the transition came. Our community rallied around the meth problem.
We really did.
And our county, our city was one of the first to put pseudoephedrine behind the counter as a local bill, a local ordinance, and the state followed along behind that.
Right.
And that slowed that sort of stemmed the tide of homemade meth. And so it transitioned then. There was a shift that happened, and the drug problem went from illegal to legal drugs. Prescription drugs. And that's about the time Oxycontin came on the market, Vicodin, hydrocodone, and a lot of the painkillers, which which had legitimate use, but the same greed that drives the illegal drug trade took root in what we would call the legal or the prescription drug market. And the drug companies started promoting it. They started propaganda campaigns that it was safe, convinced the medical community around the nation that OxyContin was this miracle drug, that it was safe, not dangerous, and a lot of people got addicted. And it's continued into what we're calling today the opioid epidemic that is taking so many lives, not only nationwide, but in our state and here in Putnam County.
Bill, we had a time with the methamphetamine. We're talking with Bill Gibson with the Power of Putnam this morning about our drug problem, not only in Putnam County, but nationwide. They were shake and bake, was what the term that I think the police officers and paramedics used, where they were making had these meth labs that were going on in their homes, and we wound up with properties across the county where these meth labs were being used and creating this meth, that it contaminated the homes to where that they had to be decontaminated or quarantined for periods of time, but because it was so dangerous. Then we saw those labs kind of go away, but methamphetamine is still a problem. So where is the meth coming from now if it's not being manufactured locally?
So one thing everybody has to understand, and it took me a while to get my brain around it, but the drug problem is constantly changing. It's never static. It's constantly changing and evolving to new methods. And at first, methamphetamine was a process that took 2 or 3 days in a home-based lab that put out a lot of toxins, like you said, and sometimes to not get caught, they would not vent the toxins outdoors because they didn't want to draw attention. So the inside of the homes became contaminated. And then it turned into what you mentioned, shake and bake, and it could be made in a Mountain Dew bottle, a 2-liter bottle, which was a crazy process.
Yes, it is.
It was made with lithium batteries and Coleman fuel, which you had actually a fire burning inside of this bottle of fuel. But now the methamphetamine that we're seeing, it's making a resurgence, making a comeback, and it's generally imported. It comes through Mexico.
So we're seeing those drugs come across our borders, like cocaine and the rest of our drugs. You're seeing the meth come across. It's being manufactured somewhere else. Hold the rest of that thought. We got to take a break. And we're talking with Bill Gibson, who's with the Power of Putnam today on our drug problem. You're listening today in Putnam County on News Talk 107.7 and 1400 The Hub. I'm County Mayor Randy Porter. More after we come back after this quick break. Welcome back to Today in Putnam County. I'm your host, County Mayor Randy Porter. Talking today with Bill Gibson with the Power of Putnam about our nationwide drug problem that we have. We've been talking about marijuana and meth and cocaine and all the illegal stuff. Second segment, I'd like to talk about the prescription drug problem we have, Bill, which is kind of taken over from some of these others. You and I go back to a day when it was nothing. You went to the doctor, needed pain meds, he wrote you a prescription. It might have 50 and you had 3 refills. Over the years, as you talked about earlier, folks have got hooked on these drugs, and now we have a prescription drug problem in our community across our nation. Can you talk about that?
Yes, sir. The train really started coming down the tracks slowly at first, and it has picked up a whole lot of momentum. As I said earlier, the pharmaceutical companies rolled out all these new products to deal with pain. And about the time a lot of the society were feeling like they don't want to feel any pain. Mm-hmm. You know, there was a time when, if something was wrong and you had some pain, that was a sign that you needed to get something fixed.
And sometimes it was emotional pain or bad things that were going on in their life that it helped them pull back out of that and not be as much aware of it with the pain meds.
Right, and the pain meds are effective for a while. They numb the pain and they deal with it. The problem with them is that our bodies biologically build up a resistance pretty quick, like to anything else, and it takes more of the medication to achieve the same amount of pain relief. And then your body gets to a point where even though the original source of the pain may have gone away, you will feel pain because you don't have the degree of pain medication that your body's used to
Your
having.
body's still addicted to it.
So people get rebound pain, and before long they're having to take more and more of the medicines to just try to feel normal. You know, it's not to get high, it's not to have some euphoria, it's just to try to get back to where you feel like you can get through your day.
Right.
And it's physical pain and it's emotional pain. People just feel like crap when they're you know, needing more of these
Needing more of
drugs.
the drugs, and they're willing to do whatever. You start looking at the percentage of folks that are in our jails and prisons today, that somehow the crime they have committed is related in some way to drug addiction.
So many people are their own victims, yet they come in, they get crossways with the criminal justice system. And there was a time when society and the criminal justice system believed we could incarcerate our way out of this problem. But several years ago, we realized that's not true. You can't just put people in jail
No.
And release them back out to continue in their addiction just to get back in jail. So we've come up, we've been enlightened. We've come up with newer and better, you know, more progressive ways to approach people, and that's based largely in part on the fact that so many people have become addicted,
Right.
inadvertently.
And it's our family members, it's our kids, it's our people that we know, professional business people that are addicted, and sometimes we don't have a clue that it's going on unless they're willing to come forward and say something.
Yeah, people want to keep it hidden, and it's partly because it's confusing. As we talked about at the break, if you make the choice to use methamphetamine or to use cocaine and you get addicted, then you've got a clearer cut decision. You've got an easier problem. You know, a banker, a teacher, or, you know, a deacon in a church who is prescribed these medications for a legitimate injury and inadvertently becomes addicted, it's harder for them to come forward.
Right.
It's harder for them to identify the point at which it's a problem and not just needing to go back to the doctor and get a little bit bigger prescription for the medicine.
It's embarrassing to them also. There are, as you said, our business people, our doctors, our nurses, our clergy. I mean, there's nobody that's immune from this. Anybody can get addicted to these pain killers, have an injury or an illness where they have to have some form of painkiller, and it's so easy to get addicted. I want to talk just for a minute about a drug that we've been carrying on the ambulances for years. It's called fentanyl. A very strong painkiller that we only give to the worst cases and in small, minute doses. We're seeing drugs laced with that now to where that it's become a health hazard to our law enforcement and paramedics and first responders, that the people have it, and if they even get it on their skin, it can absorb and cause death. Talk a little bit about the fentanyl.
Yeah, the fentanyl is causing a lot of problems, and the problem is the fentanyl that's on the ambulance is a controlled amount, and it's under lock and key,
Right.
and you know what you've got. People are accessing fentanyl through the black market and pressing it into counterfeit pills, or pills that resemble an Oxycontin or a hydrocodone, and there's no quality control. They're not. You know, they're not in labs, and so they don't know how much of the fentanyl is actually going into the pill. So what we're seeing sometimes is people that have a real high tolerance to opiates taking what they believe is an Oxycontin or something, but it's really laced with a deadly dose of fentanyl. And so they're overdosing and dying just off of the one fentanyl. And it is so potent that law enforcement officers have touched the pill or touched the powder and absorbed a toxic amount just through their skin into their bodies, and we've had some fatalities. So a lot of our law enforcement agencies here are carrying Narcan, which is a medication that can be administered at the scene of an overdose that blocks the opiate receptors and will literally reverse an overdose death. It will start somebody that's at the point of death. It'll give them the capacity to breathe again.
Very quickly. We've been carrying that on the ambulances for years. It's a great drug, and it's kind of sad though that we've got to the point that these narcotics and drugs are being laced with something that that can kill our first responders and law enforcement, but kill the people that's taking them. You gave me some stats on deaths from 2014 to 2018, and I guess the most shocking that I saw of that is in 2014 statewide we had 69 deaths from fentanyl. In 2018 we had 742.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
I don't know what the answer to all of that is, but when you start seeing drug overdoses increasing, I think you said we had maybe 20 in Putnam County in 2018. I think we've got to look at what the answers are to try to help this, and as we well know, putting those folks in jail or prison is not the answer, but there's solutions out there, and we're working on those, and in our next segment I want us to talk about that, about Power Putnam and all the agencies that are working together in Putnam County to try to solve our problems. So when we come back with Bill Gibson with Power Putnam, we're going to talk about some of those treatments and things that are going on to help the problem. You're listening to Today in Putnam County on News Talk 107.7 and 1400 The Hub. I'm County Mayor Randy Porter, your host. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, County Mayor Randy Porter. Hope you're having a great weekend. My guest today is Bill Gibson with Power of Putnam, and we're talking about the drug problem that we have not only in Putnam County but across our nation. Bill, we've been talking about all the drugs and all the issues and the problems that they cause. Let's talk about the solutions in the last segment of the show. We have a lot of programs going on, Power of Putnam being one of those in Putnam County, where a lot of agencies and a lot of different community events and all kinds of things going on to help people, to get the word out about all the programs there are to help people. Can we start talking about some of those?
Yes, sir. And the cornerstone of this is that we live in a place that is populated by good, caring people. And
Absolutely.
I've been watching us face challenges since the 1970s as a police officer and then as the district attorney and now with the Anti-Drug Coalition. And one thing that consistently happens is our people rally to face and deal with the problems that we're having. We take care of each other, and we're blessed to live in a place like this where that happens.
Right, great community.
I want to mention Power of Putnam. We've been around since 2003. The organization was founded by Paula King, who was an educator in our school system, and John Rust, a social worker who has been around here in various jobs for a number of years. And they built it around the methamphetamine problem. So many kids were coming into state custody out of contaminated homes where they couldn't bring anything with them.
Right.
And they wanted to do something about that. And the organization evolved quickly through this network of good people in the community that wanted to help. It gained momentum very quickly and got very active in really repelling the methamphetamine epidemic,
Right.
the problem that we were having, through community education and all sorts of resources that were provided. But we meet the first Thursday of every month, and we meet at Progressive Bank down on Interstate Drive at 11 a.m. Our website is powerofputnam.org, and there's a link on there where you can put your email or your contact information, and we'll send you a reminder about the meeting. But what makes it work is the people that get involved. We work with all sectors of the community, and this is just a group of concerned citizens that work through the details of how to address this problem. So I wanted to invite everybody to, I wanted to plug the organization, and if you have any desire to get involved,
Always need new
in the
people to
solution,
join.
we need your help.
We talked about, I think the public doesn't hear this enough, addiction is a disease, but it's a treatable disease. There's so many programs out there and ways to help people to treat it, but until they're willing to be helped, are willing to come forward to let us know that they've got a problem, that process can't start. Can you talk about some of those programs?
It's the most important message. It's the most important thing we'll say today, Randy, and that is people are struggling, they're suffering in silence, and they're confused about where they are in the development of an addiction problem. And what we encourage everybody to do is to just reach out and get some help.
Get help.
There's no shame in it. When we go present in groups, or sometimes in the court system, if we're picking a jury, we'll ask, you know, who's had a friend or a loved one or a family member, or maybe it's you that's struggled with some substance use problems, and every single hand will go up.
Right.
It's not an isolated problem, and people don't need to feel like that they're alone or that they're going to be stigmatized if they come forward and get some help. And help is available, and I can give some phone numbers and some resources that people can reach out to.
Won't you do that? Because there may be folks listening today that have a problem. They've been embarrassed to say anything. They may be ruining their life, and they're looking for a way to get help. So give us some information.
So the state operates a red line number. The Tennessee red line is a referral number. It's a confidential service. People can call in, and they'll ask you some questions about what's going on and what part of the state you live in, and they'll make some treatment referrals for you. And that number is 1-800-889-9789. And then we also have a local resource through Power of Putnam. We have Project Lifeline. And we have a young man, Nathan Payne, who is in his own recovery.
Mm-hmm.
He is a peer recovery specialist. He's somebody that you can call and talk to about what's going on. And Nathan can get you to the right place to get some help. His number is 865-266-9764. 865-266-9764, and that's Nathan Payne with Project Lifeline.
So we've got local programs waiting to help people, but they have to get to the point that they're willing to ask for help. And I think some folks think it's a moral failure to be addicted on drugs, and don't understand that it's not.
It's not a moral failure, and you nailed it at the start of this. It's a treatable disease. You know, if people become diabetic, if people develop heart disease, we don't look down on them and stigmatize them. We help them develop healthier lifestyle habits. We get them the right medications, and we get them help. And it's the same thing with addiction. It's not a moral failure, and it's nothing to be ashamed of.
That's right. And we've got a drug court. I'm involved with this program that was started a few years ago, and where you have folks that are coming into the judicial system, and Julie and Judge McKenzie work with those folks to keep them out of prison and jail, which is our ultimate goal. Power of Putnam, no matter what the program is, we don't want to see these folks incarcerated, because if they're incarcerated, that problem is not going to cease. They're going to be there, they're going to get out, they're going to go back to their enablers, their friends, the folks that they've been hanging around with. So we have to break that cycle. It's working very well. Power of Putnam is working really well. We've got Teen Challenge. There's all of these community agencies and organizations and nonprofits and religious groups that are willing to help. Yet, it's hard to get the word out enough to these people. We're teaching it in schools. I know you have programs where you're going to the schools and trying to hit our kids. That's really where the answer is, isn't it? Is making sure we get the information to our kids to keep them from ever getting addicted.
The easiest, by far, thing is to stop it before it starts. And an effective tool is just the truth. You know, you can't go in and talk to kids. You can't fool them. You have to give them accurate information, even at a very, very early age. Our data shows that the age of initiation for a lot of substance use, underage drinking, underage tobacco use, marijuana, and some other things is around 13.7 years of age.
Wow.
So it's kind of a surprisingly young age when most people start. So we definitely try to get in ahead of that, you know, at the younger age groups. We do a lot in the schools, a lot of educational programs, and a lot of programs out in the community. I want to take just a minute, for those that are interested, we have a couple of upcoming events.
Absolutely.
That people can get involved in. The fall DEA drug take-back is going to be taking place on October the 26th, and it's going to be at several local pharmacies. You can take any unused medications that you have in your home, and we all kind of have those.
Leave them in the medicine cabinets and forget about them, so.
We think we're gonna need them, and we don't get rid of them, and it makes people targets for theft and diversion. But it's gonna be at 7 different sites. And then we're having a town hall meeting. It's our Communities Talk Town Hall, and it's gonna be October 24th from 5 to 8 p.m. in the parking lot at the West Town Center. And that's the row of businesses that runs from the Drama Center up to the depot.
Right.
In the back parking lot at the West Town Center on the north side of that, we're having a town hall meeting. We're going to have games for kids and a lot of prevention activities, and we would just like to invite everybody to come out and get involved in that.
Bill, I want to thank you for what you and Para Putnam are doing to try to help this major problem that we have, not only in Putnam County but nationwide. You've been a long-time public servant, police district attorney, Para Putnam executive director. You've dedicated your life to public service. I want to thank you for what you have done all these years and for what your agency continues to do. And thank you for being on the show this morning.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm honored to be here.
That's our show for today. I want to thank my guest, Para Putnam's executive director, Bill Gibson, for being here. Hope you'll join us every Saturday morning at 10:30 a.m. and Sunday afternoons at 2 for Today in Putnam County on News Talk 107.7 and 1400 The Hub. You can also download the WHEB app and listen to us on your cell phone. If you missed any of our shows, go to my website at randyporter.org. As always, thanks to Brent Fleshman for producing my show each week. I'm County Mayor Randy Porter, hoping you have a great rest of your weekend. May God continue to bless our great county.